So I want you to imagine your daily environment, right? Like imagine it as a stage play.
Okay, a stage play.
Yeah. And most of us, we think the lighting in that play is just there so we can, see the actors.
Right, it's just functional.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But what if the lighting was so aggressive, so intense, that it actually became the main character? Like what if it was literally shoving the actors right off the stage?
Wow, that's a really intense image.
It is, right. And that's exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to completely rewire how you think about the spaces you inhabit every single day.
Yeah, because we usually assume a lit room is just a normal neutral room.
Exactly. But we are looking at this incredibly powerful perspective-shifting essay. It's called The Hostile Brightness, Why Light is Not Neutral.
Such a great title.
It really is. It's written by Dr. Jaime Hoerricks, and by the way, she pronounced her name Jamie.
Right, Jimmy.
Yeah. And this essay is part of a larger series she wrote called The First Autistic Person.
And, we spend so much time talking about physical accessibility, right? Like ramps, elevators, wider doors.
The obvious stuff.
Right, exactly. But we rarely pause to think about the accessibility of our sensory environment. And Dr. Hoerricks, she really forces us to confront this reality that the visual environment isn't just this passive backdrop.
Yeah, it's active.
It's a hugely active participant in whether or not someone can even, be present in a space.
Which totally goes against our baseline assumption.
Right.
I mean, you walk into a hospital or a school or a corporate office, and the institution has really only asked one question about the lights.
Is it bright enough?
Exactly. Is it bright enough? Like, can the security cameras capture the hallway? Can people read their forms?
Right. They treat light as just this simple environmental fact.
But she completely deconstructs this. She brings us into her lived experience of how light enters a space, specifically for someone with autistic visual processing.
And she argues that the light actually changes the room before she can even properly step inside.
Which is wild to think about. How does that actually work mechanically?
Well, to understand it, we have to look at sensory processing. So for a neurotypical brain, sensory filtering happens mostly automatically.
Like in the background.
Right. So you walk under a fluorescent light, and your brain might register a tiny flicker or maybe a hum for like a fraction of a second.
But then you just tune it out.
Exactly. Your brain instantly categorizes it as irrelevant. It says, hey, this isn't a threat, ignore it, and shoves it to the background.
Sensory gating.
Yes, sensory gating. But in autistic neurology, that automatic filtering, it often works really differently. The brain processes incoming sensory data with this equal, overwhelming weight.
So nothing gets shoved to the background.
Exactly. The hum of the bulb, the flicker rate, that faint green cast that Dr. Hoerricks describes in the essay, none of it gets filtered out.
Oh, wow. So she has to, manually process it?
Yeah. Her brain is forced to actively, consciously process the lighting environment before she even has a chance to process the actual physical objects or the people in the room.
It makes me think of, like a digital camera that's failing to auto-white balance.
Oh, that's a really good way to put it.
Like if you've ever taken a photo indoors under those cheap fluorescent lights and you don't have the right settings on, the whole picture comes out looking kind of sickly.
Yeah, it gets that weird yellow or green tint.
Right. The colors are distorted. The contrast is completely off. The camera just can't naturally correct for the artificial environment.
Right.
So if the brain can't naturally white balance this environment, how does the body react to that constant low-grade distortion?
Well, it takes an enormous amount of conscious energy just to manage it, and you have to remember that energy isn't infinite.
Right, the spoons concept.
Exactly. Dr. Hoerricks uses the concept of spoons, which is a metaphor used a lot in the chronic illness and neurodivergent communities.
It's basically a way to describe your finite reserve of daily energy, right?
Yeah, physical or mental energy. So when she's low on spoons, which happens quickly when you're navigating a world that wasn't built for you, that faint green cast becomes basically impossible to manage.
Because it's draining whatever energy she has left.
Right. The effort to manually filter the room leaves her with almost zero capacity to think, to talk, or to just exist there. She has this striking quote. She says, "The light did not show me the room. The light took the room away."
The light took the room away. That is, that completely redefines how we think about visibility.
It really does. It highlights this huge distinction she makes between sight and visual access.
What's the difference there?
So sight is just the mechanical act, right? Light hits your retina. You can technically see the desk, the door, the whiteboard.
The physical objects are visible.
Right. But visual access is about whether the visual field holds together long enough for you to actually use that information.
Like, can you function in the space?
Exactly. Can you think? Can you remain patient? If the light is actively taking the room away from you by distorting everything, you might have sight, but you definitely don't have visual access.
Because your brain is already in overdrive, just processing that green-tinted light.
Yeah.
Which means, I'd imagine, any extra visual stuff in the room isn't helping. It's actually a threat.
Exactly. And this leads to what she calls the demand field.
Right, the demand field. Let's get into that. What happens when visual clutter turns into a demand field?
Well, it happens when every single visible thing in a room starts actively asking for your attention.
Because the automatic filtering is off.
Right, so every poster, every label, every texture on the floor tile is basically shouting at you. Look here, read this, notice that.
She specifically calls out education here, right? Classrooms.
Oh, heavily. Because in classrooms, visual clutter is almost universally mistaken for richness.
Yeah, you walk into an elementary school and the walls are just plastered with stuff. Anchor charts, colored paper, motivational quotes.
Laminated signs reflecting the light.
Exactly. The glare from the whiteboard, the bright storage bins. The whole prevailing logic in education is that a highly decorated, colorful classroom is a welcoming one.
But she argues the exact opposite for neurodivergent students.
Mm.
She says the environment ends up competing with the task. The classroom literally shouts through their eyes.
Okay, wait. I want to push back on that just a little bit on behalf of our listeners.
All right, go ahead.
Because in a classroom, things like a visual schedule on the wall or a bin that has a picture of a pencil on it, those are literally called visual supports.
Right, they are.
Teachers spend their own money on this stuff to help students navigate the day. So how does a tool that is specifically designed for support actually become a sensory assault?
It's a great question. And it comes down to the sheer volume of visibility and this concept called gestalt perception.
Gestalt perception.
Yeah. Gestalt is basically the brain's ability to see the whole picture instead of just a chaotic pile of disconnected parts.
Like when you look at a face, you just see a face. You aren't consciously assembling two eyes and a nose.
Exactly. Your brain instantly gives you the gestalt, the whole. But in a demand field, under harsh lighting, that gestalt completely shatters.
The pieces stop fitting together.
Right. So yes, a single visual schedule on a blank wall, that might be a great support. But when you put that same schedule on a wall next to 30 other bright, demanding pieces of paper.
And is under a humming, flickering, fluorescent light.
Exactly. The brain can't form the whole picture. Visibility itself just becomes noise.
So having it big enough to read doesn't even matter.
No, font size doesn't matter if the visual field isn't calm enough for you to actually find the information, sequence it, and use it. If you can read the schedule, but you have no idea where you are in relation to the schedule or the door or the teacher.
It's useless. It's just more noise.
Precisely. It actively harms your ability to focus.
So we have this progression then. The light is harsh, the demand field gets too loud, and the gestalt shatters.
Right.
And the brain doesn't just get a little tired at this point, right? She describes a complete perceptual collapse.
It's a very vivid, terrifying description. She says first, the visual field goes sharp.
Sharp. What does she mean by that?
The edges of objects harden. Distances start to change unpredictably, like a grocery store aisle will suddenly feel infinitely long.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and motion cuts aggressively across motion. She says the face of a person standing right in front of her can lose its place inside the rest of the room.
Because she's taking in too much raw data, and there's no subconscious mechanism keeping it arranged.
Exactly. And then she hits what she calls the hostile blank.
A hostile blank.
Yeah, and she's very clear here. This is not some peaceful, clean, snowy white blank.
It's not a Zen moment.
Not at all. It's a working blank. It flattens her perception entirely. It steals the depth out of the room. It steals sequence.
It sounds like trying to read a really complicated map, like a highly detailed topographical map.
Okay, yeah.
But you're trying to read it while someone is shining a strobe light directly into your eyes.
That is exactly what it's like.
The raw information is technically there, but you can't parse it. You can't figure out where one line ends and a road begins. And then you're called stubborn because you can't give directions.
That loss of sequence is devastating. And you nailed it with the stubborn comment, because the cascading losses are intense. When the field goes blank, her speech goes.
Her ability to talk completely drops.
Right. Her patience goes. Her ability to sequence simple physical tasks goes. The sheer biological effort of just trying to stay standing in a room that won't settle down, it takes every ounce of energy.
She can't even answer someone kindly at that point.
No, because survival is the only priority.
And the real tragedy here is what this looks like from the outside.
The outside perception is entirely wrong.
Yeah, because if you're standing in a grocery store aisle, totally overwhelmed, unable to sequence the space, someone watching doesn't see a neurological event.
They see what looks like bad behavior.
Right. They think you're just being difficult.
Yeah, they see irritability or fatigue or rudeness. In a classroom, a teacher looks at a student who has hit that hostile blank, and they just see a kid who refuses to pay attention.
Or a kid acting out.
Exactly. In a hospital, it looks like irrational anxiety. The outside world constantly misinterprets the root cause. They think the person is reacting to a specific demand, like being asked to do math.
When really they're reacting to the lighting in the room where the math is happening.
Yes, they are reacting to the conditions under which all things are appearing.
And because the world misinterprets this, it generates so much shame. Like the physical environment causes the pain, but the social environment causes the shame.
That's a profound way to put it.
She writes about this small adult humiliation of needing to wear sunglasses indoors.
Oh, that part was tough to read.
Yeah, the shame of purposefully seeking out the darkest corner of a room or avoiding certain aisles at the store completely just because the packaging and the lights are too much.
It's an incredibly isolating exhaustion, knowing that you're fighting for your life in a room where everyone else has silently agreed that the lighting is fine.
It makes you feel like you're performing or being dramatic.
Right. But she's an adult professional. She still has to map out her entire life around light bulbs.
She knows which rooms will cost her too much energy before anyone even says hello.
Exactly.
And she explicitly connects this to economics. She says cheap bulbs usually mean a harsh sensory experience.
Yes, the economics of harshness.
I have this quote here. I want to read it. She says, "Cheapness is not neutral either. It is often the economic form of someone else's body being ignored."
That is such a powerful line.
It really is. So let me ask you, if cheap lighting literally costs people their speech, their orientation, their ability to function, why do institutions default to it? Is it just a budget issue, or is it a deeper blindness to neurodivergent bodies?
I think it reveals how incredibly narrow our definition of functionality really is as a society.
What do you mean?
Well, institutions build public life based on this mythical, standardized body. A body that can automatically filter out fluorescent flicker and thrives in saturated visual spaces.
On the neurotypical baseline.
Right. And if the lighting is cheap, energy efficient, and bright enough for paperwork to technically happen, the institution calls it a success. They solve the spreadsheet.
But they ignore the human nervous system.
Exactly. They build spaces under lights that some bodies literally cannot survive without losing their orientation.
And the cruelty is that when a neurodivergent person struggles in that space, the dominant culture treats it as an individual failure.
You're too sensitive.
Yes, you need to focus. Stop being dramatic. We individualize a systemic failure. We make the individual carry the cost of that cheap light bulb.
We pathologize their reaction to a hostile environment. But, she doesn't just end on the sensory damage.
Right. She actually talks about the healing side of this.
Yeah, the power of the right kind of visual input. She calls it the hypovisual side.
Because while some lights destroy her visual field, she actively seeks out other types.
Right. Yes, she looks for shimmer, movement, color, pattern, repetition.
Like spinning objects.
Exactly. She talks about the absolute mercy of watching a spinning thing or seeing something move the exact same way over and over.
Now, to an outside observer, that might seem contradictory. Like, you can't handle the visual input of a grocery store, but you actively want to stare at a highly stimulating spinning object.
It seems contradictory until you understand what it's actually doing. These specific, predictable inputs, they organize her body.
They give her an anchor.
Right. They give her nervous system a stable, reliable field. She says, a dark room can return the body to itself.
Wow.
And this exposes a massive flaw in how the medical community diagnoses autism.
Because they're only looking at the outside.
Exactly. Diagnostic criteria just observe behavior. So a doctor might write down, patient displays visual fascination with lights, or patient engages in repetitive visual stimming.
It's purely external. It's just describing the action, completely blind to the internal relationship.
Right. The medical model sees it as a symptom to document or a weird behavior to correct. But Dr. Hoerricks completely flips that. She says, Not all looking is information seeking. Some looking is regulation.
It's like using a metronome.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, imagine you're in a horribly noisy room. A dozen different songs are playing on different radios all at once.
Sounds awful. That's the visual clutter, the demand field.
Exactly. Chaotic, unpredictable. If you pull out a metronome and just intensely focus on that single, steady tick, 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 you aren't doing that because you're just, like, fascinated by the metronome.
No, you're trying to survive the noise.
Right. Focusing on that highly predictable repetition is the only way to find your own rhythm, block out the chaos, and keep your nervous system gathered together.
That is a perfect analogy. The metronome is a lifeline, and that's what these visual inputs are for her.
The spinning object is the metronome.
Exactly. A flickering fluorescent ceiling is unpredictable and destructive, but a spinning object is reliable and organizing. One kind of light wounds you, and another returns you to yourself.
She calls this sensory specificity, right, or visual weather.
Yes, visual weather. It acknowledges that the sensory environment is a climate we all exist in, but for some people, the storms are completely invisible to everyone else in the room.
She doesn't want to live in complete darkness. She just wants light that doesn't enter the room like an accusation.
That's beautifully said. She just wants the door, the desk, and the face of a friend to be available without the sheer biological effort of taking everything else away from her.
This whole essay, it really shifts the paradigm. Light isn't just something we see by. Light is a fundamental part of whether seeing even remains possible.
We really have to stop assuming a room is neutral just because the lights are on.
And we have to stop mistaking someone's silent survival in a hostile space for actual comfort.
Absolutely. She leaves us with this incredible question that challenges how we build everything. Why does civilization keep mistaking harshness for functionality?
Why do we mistake harshness for functionality?
Right.
That applies to so much more than just physical light bulbs. Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today.
Right.
If physical light and physical clutter in a classroom can literally dismantle our ability to sequence information, to speak, to just remain patient, think about the architecture of our digital spaces.
Oh, wow.
Think about the screens you look at every single day. How does the infinite scroll, the constant pop-up notifications, the auto-playing videos, that relentless algorithmic demand for your attention, how does all of that act as a hostile brightness for our minds?
That's a really unsettling thought.
Are digital environments basically the cheap fluorescent bulbs of the 21st century? And if they are, what is that digital visual weather costing our collective ability to process the world, regulate ourselves, and honestly, just answer each other kindly?
Something we all need to think about.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take a moment today to really look at the light around you, and we'll see you next time.